grading the Saints 2023 season here from PJ's Coffee, live with New Orleans Football. What a setting to do this. We're going to grade the entire season. Let's go ahead and get into it, shall we?
Welcome in to PJ's Coffee, joining you live on Airline Drive on New Orleans Football. I'm Brooke Kirchhoffer, he's Nick Underhill, and Mike Triplett getting into our...
Really unbelievable. I love the setting. Every time I see this, it blows my mind. Like, I mean, you would think PJs would block off some of this area for them while they do their live show. I mean, PJs is a sponsor. They're sponsoring this live stream. The fact that they have a family sitting, 3 feet behind them during this is wild. You know, I mean, it's one thing for the people way in the back, like in the booth or the counter, but this family is, I'm surprised they don't have microphones. I mean, I'm surprised their conversation isn't going to get picked up. And if you're this family, you got to be thinking like, I really don't want my lunch live streamed to a bunch of Saints fans. You know, it's a wild situation. You'd think that they would move, but I digress.
Our 2023 Saints season review, evaluating how this 9-8 Saints team performed this past season.
Yeah, a lot to get into today. We're at the
So
PJs
much.
on Airline. Make sure you go and check that out. Great location here. It's lively. A lot of people.
Very lively. I mean, what a spot to get some coffee. Ladies and gentlemen, let's grade it. All right, let's do it. Let's do the report card. But before we grade the New Orleans Saints, let's grade my performance this year. Boom! There it is. What a graphic. Come on. Who's doing it like me? There it is right there. James Skrmetta, the face that runs the place. Hometown, Biloxi, Mississippi. Dome Dogs consumed this year. So 8 home games. 16.4 Dome Dogs. This is all from ESPN Analytical Team, also from Pro Football Focus. So 16.4 is pretty good. Solid. It's about a little over 2, right? A little over 2 a game. One game, I did get 3. Everyone knows that. So the analytical department definitely had that in there. Bloody Mary, Crown, and Sodas drank. 34.7. Seems like a lot. Wow. Hey, mixing a water, my guy. So let's see. That's what, 4 a game? Right? 4 times 8 is what? 32? Something like that? Who knows? Yeah, I mean, solid numbers there across the board. You always start with the Bloody Marys. Always start with the Bloody Marys, and then you slowly go higher and higher. Usually I do 2 Bloody Marys, go straight into the Crown after that. Sometimes it's 1 Bloody Mary. Depends on the indigestion. Depends on the GERD from the night before. Fastest rising channel in New Orleans sports media. That part is absolutely 100% correct. No doubt about it. No one is doing what we are doing. Well, actually, Mel Kiper on the bottom here, we can see Mel Kiper said that. Mel Kiper, quote, "No one can do what James does on a daily basis. Incredible." Wow. Thank you very much, Mel. Unbelievable stuff here. What is it? Round 1, pick 1. NOF Network was picked. Round 2, pick 15 off the bench. Ooh, they slipped a little bit in the draft. So good stuff here. A strong performance. A strong performance for me this year. I'm not going to lie. Took over, not only going to the games in the lows, screaming at Dennis Allen and Pete Carmichael, Mickey Loomis, but just consuming so much of the concession, all that stuff. They didn't have all the stats on here, like some of the numbers. I think it's one time I did buy a beer out of the fentanyl-laced ice chest that is on the corner of every single street during my walk to the Superdome. One game. I'm trying to think what game it was. Might have been the Bears game. But I did get a lukewarm, more than likely fentanyl-laced beer out of that ice chest. So only 1 trip. Yeah, good stats here. Really proud of my performance. Didn't miss a game. Stuck through it. I think a lot of what we did on this channel led to the firing of Pete Carmichael. I saw someone in a comment say it was kind of like a Scooby-Doo meme. He said, "If it wasn't for you and your dumb analytics, Pete Carmichael wouldn't have got fired." It was kind of like that. If it wasn't for you and if it wasn't for these pesky kids, we would have got away with it. And it's like, that's kind of the point. That's what we're doing here. We're holding the team accountable. We're the watchdog of this. So I can't get over this graphic. What a graphic. Beautiful stuff. What a performance. Very proud of it. Good stuff. Another season in the books. Fantastic. Wow. Let's get back to the actual grading of the Saints season.
So get your day started every day with them. It's the absolute best blogger fuel, so make sure you get it and get your day started with that.
Blogger, I mean, interesting. Like, I know this isn't a coffee video, but it's such a thin razor's edge, because you can absolutely drink too much coffee and have too much caffeine. And then as a writer, blogger, video king, superstar, whatever you want to put it, then you're basically just in a panic attack. You're basically in a isolated panic attack that you've caused yourself. Heart absolutely pounding, your eyeballs are vibrating, you can't breathe, all because you've drank just a ridiculous amount of coffee. It's the same thing as like drinking beer or whatever. Like, you can have a certain amount, it can be fantastic, it can calm you down, or you can have way too much. The next thing you know, you're sleeping on the sidewalk, and no one wants to be in that position, right? So yeah, be careful. What I'm trying to say is in moderation, ladies and gentlemen. All things in moderation.
And if you need a new car, check out my guy Matt Bowers, best car dealer in the whole entire galaxy. He'll get you right, get you in the car of your dreams at the best price with the best customer care. All right, let's hit these ads.
Here we go.
The New Orleans Football Show is proudly presented by PJ's Coffee.
Just did that.
Colors. Their experienced staff offer 5-star custom.
If you want rings,
blend of aged wheat bourbon, American light whiskey,
bourbon,
and fresh Ponchatoula strawberries.
Unbelievable. All right, here we go. What a music. When did they get this intro with the songs? This CGI AI football guy in the background? What?
Check out these deals of the week at Walgreens.
More ads? Now we're doing Walgreens ads? How the hell? We're 6 minutes into this video, and I've had PJ's Coffee. So we got coffee, got a latte, then we go to Matt Bowers Auto Group, bought the car there, then we go get the jewelry, then we get the hard hide. Now I gotta get an Uber because I'm drinking. I can't be driving my new car from Matt Bowers Auto Group. And just when I think we're done, boom, now I'm buying Scope from Walgreens. Insane amount of ads. I know this is from YouTube, but my God, skip. Let's rock and roll. Oh, beautiful. Very nice intro. Good stuff.
Let's get into our lead topic presented by Friend & Company.
The lead topic, I think, at this point is hard hide whiskey or refinanced Isuzu trucks from Matt Bowers Auto Group.
Jewelers, the official jewelers of the New Orleans Saints. Friend & Company Fine Jewelers is home to a new engagement salon where they have a wide selection of beautiful engagement rings. And while you're there, ask them about their fleur-de-lis collection of earrings.
The fix is that
you got time before Valentine's Day. All right, let's get to our lead topic. 2023 season review. What would you fix and what would you keep heading into 2024?
Okay, the question, what would you fix, what would you keep? Okay, so we know what the answer is, and it's already kind of been fixed, right? I would fix the offense. The problem, I was actually thinking about this. So, as you know, I get requests to go on radio shows all the time. I do requests to get these to do these hour drops and 30-minute drops, whatever. And I always think about what could you get asked. And I thought about if someone asked me what was the biggest problem this season for the Saints. It's like, man, that's a pretty good question, because a lot of things could be there's a lot of answers. There's a lot of things that could be a possible answer of what went wrong for the Saints, right? I think the biggest thing is the offense. As far as the scheme, the identity, we weren't creative enough. We weren't running a 2023 offense. I think Pete Carmichael wasn't the guy. We're not going to go over that. We did that for 17, 18 weeks. That I really do believe is the main part. And, a lot of people get bogged down in this whole, like, find a left tackle, find a third defensive back, find a safety. I don't care about all that. I'm thinking big picture. So I absolutely would, number one, fix the offense. And we're trying to. So kudos. What would I keep? I think you have to keep your core playmakers. You have to keep Alvin Kamara, Chris Olave, Rashid Shaheed. Defensively, you've got to keep Demario Davis. You got to keep Carl Granderson, that kind of group. The rest is kind of whatever. Like the whole idea of getting off of Lattimore, getting off of Michael Thomas, kind of reshaping some of these contracts. But I would also keep, let's see, what else would I keep? I would keep, that's probably about it. That honestly is probably, I'd be okay with getting some new, because I think a lot of people would say, well, keep Dennis Allen as the DC, right? Keep him as the defensive guy. But we saw the defense slack so bad at the middle to end of last year. I'm not super confident in that. I know we are keeping Dennis Allen, but I wouldn't stand up and be like, we have to keep Dennis Allen as DC. I don't know if I saw enough full season to really stand on that. So as far as keep, I'd probably just keep those main playmakers, that main core, and build off of that. The rest of literally everything can probably go.
Yeah, I mean, the fix is the list is a little bit longer, I think. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that I think they can fix with their team. We've talked a lot about the running game. We've talked.
Yeah, if we want to go like just a list, we got to fix the fact that we cannot run the football. We have to fix that we can't stop the run. We have to fix our special teams, that as far as like field goal, kicker, punter, things like that. Rashidi, he was fine as a return man, but those need to be fixed. Let's see, getting more production out of the tight ends. I mean, I know at the end there, Juwan Johnson kind of came on, but it's, again, kind of a full term thing. And starting fast, the fact that we had one game where we scored on the opening possession. That's something you absolutely have to fix. But I think a lot of that is wrapped up into the new OC. And that's why I don't get bogged down in the micro stuff, because you would assume that a lot of those issues are going to get fixed at the same time. Like starting fast, developing a running game, getting the ball to the playmakers, all of those the OC is going to take care of, you'd think. So, I kind of look at it as a little bit of a bigger like umbrella, and then those little issues go under that.
It's a lot about the pass protection, which got a little bit better. We've talked a lot about the pass rush, which is something that they got to do. So, I mean, I think it's just all the...
No, defensively, that's number one. Defensively, figuring out how to rush the passer, because we had none of that. We had no rushing the passer. We had no sack threat at all throughout the entire season. So getting some kind of pass rush would be my number one thing if I could fix on the defense.
The points that we've kind of been hammering all along. And then, for themselves, I think that they want to fix their culture and have a better locker room and kind of have people be doing the things they need to do to win when they're away from the facility. So I think those are all the things that you would want to change. As far as the fix, I mean, I think the wide receivers have played really well. I think
what would you keep?
What would I keep?
I'm saying
or
as
keep.
far as what you would
keep.
keep.
Yeah, I'm sorry. What would I keep? Yeah, the wide receivers played really well. I think they have a good secondary. I think they have a good defensive scheme. So I think all the stuff that worked was obvious and it worked, and the stuff that didn't, I think, we've been hammering that stuff for 6 months.
Nick's reading off my index card here. I didn't know you could see through it. Run game. What would you fix? Run game. Defensive line. The only thing you didn't say is I wrote run D and pass rush. The run D I thought was really bad this year.
Yes, it was.
And what would you keep? Young wide receiver core. And I put Derek Carr under it. What I would agree.
Yeah, Carr, interesting. I would keep Carr. I think Carr, I've said this before, as far as the whole season, I'd give him like a C. I think he was bad at the beginning, good at the end, blended to an average, I would say C grade for the year. I think Carr has some upside. I think he's good enough to where with everything in flux, if we get a good OC, I think Carr can be fine. I think Carr can do for the Saints what Geno did for the Seahawks in his first year. Geno, he kind of exploded and he had that good year, went to the playoffs, all that stuff. I think Carr can do that too. I think he can kind of peaks and valleys. I think he's good enough skill set wise. We don't have to cut bait with Carr after 1 year. That would be just too much turmoil, too much. I don't think there's a better answer out there. I mean, it's really crazy to think about that. At some points this season, we were out here saying like, guys, people were calling for Jake Haener to start. It's like, guys, let's just relax. Okay, that's insane. All right, that's the craziest thing I've ever heard. So I think quarterback is fine. I would keep Carr. I'm not saying Carr is a Hall of Famer. I'm not saying Carr is the next Drew Brees. But with all the things we have to fix, throwing a quarterback in there, it's not the time. So I'm totally fine with Derek Carr being the starting quarterback for next season.
Agree with on that point is whatever they found in December, build off of it.
Yeah.
So we talked a lot about why Pete Carmichael had to go, why they're making a change at offensive coordinator while they're overhauling the offense. But I think they feel really good. I think we feel really good about the fact that Derek Carr and all of the receivers, and throw in Juwan Johnson in it too. They seem to have found something, and I hope that can carry over and it doesn't feel like they're starting at square one with that passing offense.
Yeah, you guys hit all the big topics. I'm going to go a little bit more specific on what I'd like to keep. I think you try and keep Isaac Yiadom and Jonathan Abram around, given what you've seen this season and being able to add depth heading into 2024, not trying to create depth. Being able to keep those guys around, I think that would help. I think you fix the defensive line. The O-line was manageable at the end of the season.
The O-line was bad. It got better, but you definitely. I had someone ask me this too. They said, "Would you attack fixing the offensive line in the draft or free agency?" We need players who don't need to be developed. We need players who can come in, do the job, be serviceable, be good on the offensive line while we develop everything else, right? We need like plug and play players on the offensive line. So I would try and address that in free agency. I would try and get guys who have done the job. They can do the job. You're going to plug them in, let them protect Carr while you figure out the rest. So that's how I would deal with the offensive line. I wouldn't try and go draft these players or develop these players or whatever, spend 400 hours trying to teach Trevor Penning how to play. Just go get some guys who you know can how to do it, figure that out later.
Season, but to me, the defensive line, and we've all harped on this. I think we're going to get into this once we get into our grades with the defensive line, but man, to me, that's got to be the biggest fix. Before we get to our grades, season MVPs, all that though, let's talk about this new coach that got a new request for a coach. Michael Hodges was requested to interview for the Patriots opening defensive coordinator job, and I believe that's the first time he's been interviewed for a DC job.
Yeah, so that's the Saints linebacker coach, I believe, is who they're talking about.
This in his career. What does it say about the job that he's done in New Orleans?
I mean, I think it's kind of obvious that, you know, and sometimes it's hard to tell who the good coaches are, position coaches. I think he's one that seems kind of obvious, and I've been saying for a few years that I think one day he's probably going to be a head coach. Like, he just kind of has that charisma, and it seems like he has that attention to detail. He's clearly a culture builder in that linebacker room. You know, the guys buy in, his players typically get better. He's good at developing, and you just kind of can see that being a spot of consistency. And you know, it's a credit to him. He should be noticed and be getting these types of interviews. And I'm sure if he doesn't get this job, he'll be at some point in one of these roles soon.
The way I look at this, by the way, just a quick, like, my philosophy on this is that from a team, from a franchise, I think with position players, if they want to take a job that's a better job somewhere, like if he wants to go be the DC or he wants to go do something at a different position or whatever, I think you should let position coaches do that. I don't think you should force position coaches to be a position coach in the same place just because they're good at it. You know, I think it's kind of a show of good faith or whatever. So if he wants to go do a job, take a job that's elevating or all that stuff, I think generally you should let your position coaches and front office people do that.
Sooner than later. People around the league want Dennis Allen's scheme, and people here can say whatever they want about it. It's one of the better schemes in the league. It works consistently. It's influential in the NFL. So people want to tap into that, just like people want to tap into good offenses. So, I mean, and he's one of the younger guys that's part of that. So, like, there hasn't been a ton of people but we've seen it. Ryan Nielsen went on, now Hodges. And
Aaron Glenn.
Yeah, and he's someone that's tied in with, you know, DA from I believe they went to the same college, right? He's a Texas A&M guy, and they're really tight. They great relationship, and he's kind of one of them guys that DA found and brought up and taught, and he came up through the tree. And whether it's now or later, I think it's time for him to get that type of opportunity. So no surprise to me. Gerard Mayo, you know, was a linebackers coach in New England, played linebacker for New England. He knows good linebacker play. It's not a surprise that Hodges is somebody that's on his radar. And, you know, I kind of heard that there's somebody else here that's maybe the favorite, but I would not be surprised at all if he goes in there and interviews and kind of blows people away because he has a type of personality. So on the field, definitely deserving of it. But, like, you get him in a room, and I think he can win over kind of pretty much anybody.
Yeah, no, look, I can echo everything you just said for the most part. I mean, has tremendous respect from the players as far as we can tell that. And that
I tell you what, too, like from Gerard Mayo having to take over Belichick, you know, fill the shoes of Belichick, and the first thing he wants to do is get Hodges in there. It says a lot about him. We're going to skip a little bit of the Hodges talk here, keep moving along. It's a long video, so, you know.
It was probably Nielsen. Like, I could just tell.
One day we'll see, but I think the coach now that is in New England, the now head coach, him being a former linebackers player, I think says a lot.
But, yeah, I mean,
which is probably a good thing if you're a first-year DC to not have to sink or swim in that role, right? If Michael Hodges does get that job.
Oh, yeah, it's good for any coordinator to come in and not be in to have some time to really implement your vision, implement your ideas, figure things out, you know, understand that how different the job is from going from a position coach to a coordinator, you know, to a tried and true DC or OC. Yeah, it's always better if you have a little bit of time, a little bit of grace in that.
Just as an aside, changing subjects, but this is a good time to mention. I was just listening to a different podcast where I think Peter Schrager, one of the hosts from the NFL Network, he's close with Cliff Kingsbury, and he revealed Cliff Kingsbury's interviewing for some offensive coordinator jobs. Don't know if he's talked to the Saints yet, but he revealed that Cliff Kingsbury specifically said the perfect job for him, he thinks, would be one of these jobs where they have a defensive head coach and a young quarterback so that it can kind of be his offense. We were just talking about that the other day.
Yeah, I mean, I say that all the time, where there are so many head coaches, Dennis Allen, where they are a good coordinator. They don't want to do both. Not every – it's kind of crazy to think about, honestly, where it's like this guy is a defensive genius. I'm just making something up. This guy's a defensive genius or an offensive genius. Now let's make them do everything. Like, let's make them worry about the culture, worry about the logistics of travel, how we're going to practice. Like, think about the stuff that head coaches do. People really get lost in that. They really get lost in how much they do outside of the game, right? Like if there's travel involved, let's say you travel, let's say you're the head coach of Jacksonville and you play in Seattle, and then the next game you play in Las Vegas. You have to decide, are we going to fly to Seattle, then fly back, then go to Vegas, or are we going to fly to Seattle, stay on the West Coast, then we're going to go. You have to do all that logistical stuff, all the non-football stuff. Some people just don't want to do that or just can't. Good head coaches can do all that stuff. Belichick was a master at logistics. He was a master at travel, and like when they were going to travel, how much rest they were going to have. He created the idea of training at altitude to prepare for games at altitude, things like that. So Kingsbury, I don't think Cliff Kingsbury is anything special. I mean, you can kind of, evidence is growing now that he might actually be bad. And when you look at some of the players he's had and how little he's got out of them, I mean, he was just at USC, and Caleb Williams had a much worse year this year when Kingsbury was there as his coach versus when Kingsbury wasn't there. So, but yeah, of course Kingsbury wants to go to a place where he can just be an offensive guy. He can just be a coordinator. So I think that very normal, very, very normal where you see a defensive coordinator or an offensive coordinator fail at the head coach spot, but then go to a coordinator role and flourish there.
Day where we were saying the Saints job could be attractive to top offensive coordinator candidates, and there is a top offensive coordinator candidate who is being quoted as saying, I would prefer to go somewhere where I get to run the offense. So that is something, and it like backs up what we talked about, that could be in the Saints' favor when they're hiring an offensive coordinator. It's
an interesting way to look at it. We expect to hear some more names come about. We have the three that we have heard so far be requested to interview for the OC job. All right, moving on to our season review. Let's get to our money segment presented by Jefferson Financial Federal Credit Union. Yeah. 2023 season MVP and why? Excuse me.
All right, 2023 season MVP. Probably Demario Davis. Demario Davis was probably the best player for the Saints this season as far as like production, the whole season, consistency, all that stuff. I would say Demario. He was. You can make an argument that he was probably one of the top three linebacker in the NFL this season. He was very good. The fact that he's as old as he is, but it just doesn't matter. Huge kudos to Demario Davis. I would say he's probably. I'm trying to think who even else it would be. I think it has to be him. I mean, it's no one on the offense. It's not Carr. It's not Kamara. It's not Olave. It's not Rashid. It's not any of those guys. Defensively, the only person I can think of is Demario. So I think it's got to be Demario Davis. Carl Granderson was really good, but I think Demario was better.
Still getting this voice back. It's working back, but I feel great. All right, season MVP. Mine, and I want to go first because I feel like somebody else probably has it. Paulson Adebo. He's one of two players that all season long he's just one of two that the Saints that was voted as an NFC Player of the Week. Blake Grupe was the other one. 4 interceptions, which is a new season high for Adebo. He only missed 2 games, so he was, for the most part, reliable this season for the Saints. 2 forced fumbles, 2 fumbles recovered. I had Tyrann Mathieu kind of as my close second MVP. He also had 4 interceptions, and Tyrann Mathieu also had some the way when he had his interceptions, it was almost game-changing plays. But to me, Paulson Adebo is that guy who deserves the most valuable player.
I think Adebo was good, but kind of what I was saying in a short we posted recently, I would say Adebo had the kind of season that you expect. You know, like he had the season where above average to good, that's what we need. You know, like if that's your season MVP, not a good sign for the season. I think DeMario's season was better as a whole. I think Adebo was good, but
go to Mike. I want to hear Mike's
well,
first.
Yeah.
Paulson Adebo was my choice too, and I think I had said that before, and I agree with everything you said. But in addition to that, was the importance of his role this year because Alontae Taylor wasn't ready yet, and Adebo won that job, and then Marshawn Lattimore missed half the season. So Paulson Adebo became incredibly important to this team too. So I agree with that. But I'll go with DeMario. I had a backup choice, and Nick had some stats about all the different things that were actually the most or the best he has done in all his years with the Saints, which is hard to believe. 121 tackles is one of those, his highest total, tied his career high with 6.5 sacks, 12 tackles for loss, a forced fumble, 11 QB hits.
Yeah, I mean, you hear those stats. I mean, you're talking about like, not only was it the best season for the Saints, like he was the best season, but it's also like probably his best season as a professional, his best season as a pro was this year. So, like I said, I mean, you know, Adebo is good, but I don't think you can pick anyone but DeMario.
Incredibly important as a leader on this team, holding the defense together when they went through that lull in the middle of the season and finished strong. Look, I mean, you can never argue against him as an MVP of this team, too.
I went with Eric McCoy, and I kind of feel like if you take him off the team, they would have been absolutely screwed. And that's why I went with him.
It's a great pick.
I thought he had a good season, and his season's kind of interesting. He ended up giving up 27 pressures and 4 sacks, but he gave up 3 sacks in the first 4 games and then 1 just kind of the rest of the way. Once he locked in, seemed like he got comfortable with Carr. Things got a lot better for him, and he's just kind of been, you know, I think he's just instrumental to that group and their success, and I think his importance to the team can't be overstated. And you know, the little fight with Derek Carr, I think, was a turning point for the team. So that kind of brought everybody together as well.
You've seen the stats, the before fight and the after fight stats.
It really is crazy how much Saints like had to go through. I mean, you look at the McCoy fight with Carr, okay, and then you look at the Lions game with the fans booing and the infamous, 21-0 in the first 14 seconds of the game and all that. Those 2 moments, after both of those moments, there was an uptick in performance. There was a obvious uptick in everything. This season, say what you want, it sounds like lip service, but this season really was a season of this team coming together and this team just kind of getting used to each other, kind of bickering, fighting, figuring things out. And it seems like it took the whole year, which is horrible for fans. It seems like it took the whole, I don't know if it was just because you don't really hear that happening that much. So I don't know if it was just such a oil and water personality thing, or I don't know why it was so pronounced. But it seems like it took the entire season for these guys to just kind of understand each other, get used to each other, figure out how to communicate and figure each other out. Looking back at it now, it's kind of ridiculous, honestly, that it took that long for this to happen. You don't ever see that. But those are 2 moments where maybe it's happenstance, but you can certainly see that those things happened and production went up.
It's like people were asking Eric McCoy about it, and he laughed.
It was needed. It was needed. But yeah, I got him as the team MVP for sure.
Perfect segue to most improved. I've got Derek Carr as.
Yeah, I think Carr could definitely be most improved. I'd be totally fine with that because he was really bad to start the year. He was really bad. I mean, you're talking about a lot of games with 60, 70 yards passing at the half, a lot of issues. We just weren't doing anything offensively. So many 3-and-outs, so many slow starts. So and then he did become really good towards the back end of the year, the last 5-ish games of the season. He probably was a top 10 quarterback. He was playing like a top 10 quarterback. He was playing really good. So yeah, I think that's fine. That's probably the easiest pick, but it's probably the right pick.
As my most improved player for this year. If you watched our dot just in the last week, we did a comparison of Carr in the first 4 games versus the last 4 games, and the numbers are just so glaring. And two, I mean, he got booed out of his own building and still responded and showed up for these Saints fans and continued to ask for their favor and continuing to show up. Look, has it been a rocky season with Carr? Absolutely. Being mindful that I have him as most improved, not as the MVP, but I think there were a lot of factors that went into why he had a successful end of season 2. The play calling got better, the offensive line play somehow got better, even though they were on their 2s and 3s toward the end of the season. The chemistry with the wide receivers got better. Chemistry with their center got better, clearly, after you just mentioned, a big turning point for them. I think it's something positive that the Saints can look for next year, with Carr ascending at the end.
We kept saying all year long, but it was almost like the Saints needed a preseason. In the middle of the season, they needed like 4 games that didn't matter, that didn't count, that they could just kind of get through some things. They could just kind of work through some things. And that's what it looked like. It looked like they were almost at practice in a lot of these games. And then next thing you know, the season's over. I don't know what happened during OTAs and training camp and preseason and all that, but they didn't do enough. It didn't seem like, I don't think we really saw this version of the New Orleans Saints until after like midway through the Lions game. I think is when you saw kind of the actual version of this team. The first 8-9 weeks was a disjointed mess. It was all over the place. I mean, you got to think, we were so disjointed and we were so everywhere that Alvin Kamara had 13 catches for 33 yards. That's one of the things that happens just out of accident. It doesn't, because that's not part of the game plan. Like you never saw him get 12 catches again. After that, he was never that focal of a receiving threat for the rest of the season. So it's like, that's how lost they were at times, where we saw that kind of stuff happening. Again, we saw so many games where Carr would have 44 passing yards going into the half. It was just, I don't know. That's something only they will know, of why it was so bad early on, but it was ugly.
My most improved guy, and I kind of looked at it from year over year. Like, I think it is a Debo for me, but the other guy, and I'm not going to belabor that because you guys already talked about all the things he did well, 0 picks to 4 picks. But I think the other guy that deserves a lot of mention here is Malcolm Roach. His run defense this year before he got hurt was really good, and he's somebody that I think the Saints need to re-sign. And I think that, I think he's huge for their locker room. If they're trying to build culture, I think having him back is hugely important. But I think he flew way under the radar, and I think his loss was something that was a big hit to this team's run defense. And it was a lot better this year than it was last year.
The names I wrote down were also year over year, as opposed to the beginning of the season to the end of the season. Debo I had first, but he was also my MVP. I don't know if Carl Granderson definitely belongs here, because he started to do this over the second half of last season. I think he just kind of continued.
Yeah, I think Carl continued. He got paid early on, and then he showed like why he got paid. So I don't think, I kind of agree. I think it was more of a continuation of what he was doing.
What he was doing late last season, but when you combine what he did at the end of last season with what he did this season, I think he became an MVP. I mean, I think he was an MVP contender. I think he's one of the guys he's maybe the only guy you can build for the future on, him and Brian Brzee on this defensive line. He had a career-high 8.5 sacks after he had 5.5 last year, signed that contract extension. I just think he has elevated his status so much this year to where you believe in him as kind of a core guy. And then the only other name that I think we need to mention here is Andrus Peat. I mean, I think everybody had left him for dead.
Yeah.
And he really maybe had his best season since like 2017 or 2018, and to do it back at left tackle especially, I think everybody wants him back now.
Yep.
I feel like we gave Andrus Peat serious flowers too. I forget what game it was, but it was at one point in the season. I think it's when he did take over.
The thing about culture is that, and I talk about this with Cam Jordan sometimes, where sometimes you do sacrifice production for culture. And it's important, if they want to rebuild a culture with the players, if it's that bad to where players aren't doing what they got to do, they're worried about this, worried about that, that's something else you can address in free agency, where you go get these guys who are in free agency because their production may have slipped, but they may have Super Bowl experience. They may just be a workout warrior. They may just be like a really great locker room guy. You go get a couple of those guys to be your depth, to be the if all things are equal, you know, if your backup defensive tackle is playing at a 78 grade and you can go get a 75 guy who's a super high culture guy, go get the 75 guy. Like that little bit of drop in production is worth the other stuff, especially with sounds like how bad the Saints need culture. So that's something else that you can fix in free agency. And you can kind of kill two birds with one stone. You know, if you want to rebuild the offensive line or the run defense from free agency, you can specifically focus, okay, who are guys who can stop the run, who are also great culture guys, who are great team builders. Let's go get that guy, right? And then you can kind of knock that out, you know. So, but having that is something, you know, in the early segment they talked about what would you fix. That's a good example of a linear path you can take in the off season to get to a goal. That's a good way of saying, okay, we need to fix this, this, and this. This is how we do it. So we need to be targeting, just like the offensive coordinator, we know what we're trying to target. Young guy, McVay tree, you know, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We need to look at these free agents as, okay, who are guys who can either stop the run or rush the passer or whatever thing we're trying to fill, who also bring a high level of culture.
At left tackle, and we all were very surprised at how he was able to perform, and we did write him off. I feel like in training camp he was dealing with injuries. He didn't necessarily.
Saints wrote him off.
He got benched. Yeah,
and he didn't look like. Well, I think I said this too. He just didn't look like he was enjoying football as much, and he switched things around throughout the season and took responsibility at that left tackle position, in my opinion.
Yeah, we didn't write him off. He took a pay cut and got benched. Like, he was done. Yeah. That's not a misevaluation. That's them giving up on him at that point.
All right, let's get to our regular season grades per position, starting with quarterback. You want to
C. Big time C.
lead us off?
Yeah, I was torn between C+ and B- basically because of what you said. Like, are we talking about total body of work or where he got at the end? But I think I feel
you got to talk about total body of work. Don't mix that up. Total body of work.
pretty good about a B-. When you look at it all, if you just told me to review everything Derek Carr did by the end of it, he was 10th in the NFL in passer rating, really 8th among all quarterbacks who actually played the whole season. 25 TDs, 8 interceptions.
So this is another thing I wanted to talk about, or I've seen on Twitter a lot. So a lot of people are throwing this out there. And I'm going to make this quick because this is not anything to do with like the grading thing or whatever. People throw around these numbers with Carr. And I've seen a lot of people being like, oh, he's the 10th best passer rating or whatever amongst quarterbacks who played 10 or more games. Or let's do yards. He's 10th in yards about quarterbacks who have played 10 or more games. You can't do that. You can't have a ranking system where people are ranked and some of them have played 6 or 7 less games. Like the fact that if you told me, well, Derek Carr, he had more passing yards than Joe Burrow this year, like, obviously, of course, he played way more games than them. You can't have them on the same ranking. So if you are going to go by that kind of stuff, I would tell you, and I also saw people saying, well, do it by pass attempts. They had like 330 pass attempts in there. Burrow had over 330 pass attempts. So if you're going to do the final stat compilation, only do it with quarterbacks who I would say played more than 16 games. 15 games at the minimum. So do quarterbacks who played 15 games, started in 15 games, and then rank them that way. Because if you say Carr is the 9th quarterback in the NFL in yards, that sounds a lot better than if you do I'm just going to make something up. He's 6th. He's 6 out of 10 that played 15 or more games, right? So don't let the stats mix you up. Also, to what Mike is saying, it's a bad way to evaluate somebody if you just look at the end stats. Because like Carr, he was an F at the beginning of the year. He was an A at the end of the year. So if you say, well, he finished at a B-, it's like he really didn't. He finished at an A, right? So you have to do the whole body of work, the whole thing. You got to grade the bad and the good. Carr was a very peaks and valley quarterback. He was very up and down. He was very hit or miss. And as you all know, if you just look at the stats, you also get into garbage time stats and empty calories and stuff like that. So I might make a video on how to properly do this with the stat things. I've been getting a lot of questions on the YouTube comments or on Twitter, and I think people are kind of directionally right, but they're still mixing some things up. So it can be hard to look at it just stat wise, so be careful what you do. But I think C is fine. I'm just talking about Carr. I'm not grading Winston and Taysom at all.
228 yards per game is low, but his passer rating of 97.7, the third highest of his career. Completion percentage, third highest of his career. It was just how it happened. It got so low for a while, and then it got really good at the end. But if health was a big reason for that, if getting on the same page and learning the offense and learning the receivers was a part for that, I feel pretty good about a B-, and I actually feel pretty good about him being the quarterback again. I
also think that part is ridiculous. The part where it's like, well, if it was about learning his receivers and he was hurt and whatever, it's like, yeah, well, it still happened. So like, we in the sports betting world, we always say, if you lose a bet, but then you're like, but I lost, but this unlucky thing had to happen, and then this unlucky thing had to happen, and then this unlucky thing had to happen. So I mean, I was right. It's just like all these things had to happen for me to lose. You go tell that to the ticket writer, and guess what they're going to say? Yeah, well, your bet still lost. So I don't care if it was because of the wide receiver communication, or if it was because of the injuries, or because of whatever. We still had the bad. It still counted. We still didn't win the division. We still won 9 games. We still underperformed in every area. We still had whatever the horrible games were, where we kicked 6 field goals and we couldn't score, and we were 0 for whatever in the red zone. Like, all that still happened. It absolutely did get better. But you have to accept it for what it is. You can't grade on a curve. Okay, there's no reason to. Be for real right now. C.
And next year.
I'm on the same page. I gave a C because I was like,
That's
passed,
my girl.
but barely. I couldn't.
Brooke knows what's going on.
The quarterback's a C.
Yeah, so like, what's a C? 70%, like in a
You
class,
passed.
Yeah,
right?
average.
It's like
Yeah,
a 70%
I think
rating.
of C is almost like a 50%. Like, C is average.
I mean,
Dead.
50 ain't average. Brother, did you ever go to school? In what universe are you getting a 50 in passing? What's going on here? Ladies and gentlemen, I don't know about y'all, but when I went to high school, this is how the grading system was. 90 and above was an A. 100 obviously is the highest. Anything under 70 is an F. So if you got a 70, you got a D. If you got a 68, congratulations, you got an F. Now you have to throw away your test. You have to tell your parents that the printer ran out of ink and they didn't have the results for the test just to buy you an extra day. However you want to do it, okay? A 50, brother, that isn't average. A 50 is not only did you fail the test, but they are concerned about you. If you get a 50, you are being taken into a room, into an office, and you have a guidance counselor asking you questions about what your problem is if you make a 50. If you make a 50, you don't even get your test back. They don't even grade your test and hand it back to you. They hand all the other tests, and then they're like, hey, we are going to have to see you after school. Oh my God, right? So the idea that a 50 is a C, brother, get to the counter and get you some coffee because you are lost right now. Okay? 70 is a C-ish, right? So as far as what they're talking about, a 70 grade, like a 70 PFF grade would be, kind of a C situation. A 70 in my world, my high school, that's a D, brother. That's a D. Pause.
Average, right?
I know in my classes I had to get 70% to get a C, and I was usually below that 70%, so I'm very familiar with that 70%. So
there you go.
I mean, that was usually the mark. I mean,
thank you. A scholar.
I feel like it's a low C. Like
yeah.
You got that last 4 or 5 games, but like before that, there was a lot of like, man, this guy isn't doing it, and
Yes.
I think just being fair to the whole process, like I think it's a low C for me.
Thank you. Exactly. Being fair to the whole process. My game being fair. B-. Get real. Get real right now. If you think what we saw this season was a B-. If that's a B-, I'm getting sick to my stomach even thinking that could have been a B-.
Wide receivers.
B plus ish, somewhere in there, maybe a B. I think we'll just go with a B because there was some up and downs early on in the year. Olave kind of started off with a slump. Once it got going, I think it was probably a B plus good-ish. Shahid had some good times, but he had some bad times too. Like the Green Bay game, he didn't have I don't think he had a target or a catch. So and a lot of that is scheme, but I'd say B. I'd be cool with B.
B. I'll give him a B. I mean,
there you go.
I think they were pretty good most of the year. If Mike hadn't gotten hurt, if Chris hadn't had his little lull, I think we're probably like higher up. But
probably.
I think just like a solid B overall for the group.
I gave him a B too because they had to be above a C, but I couldn't quite.
I was just about to say that. Brooke is firing on all cylinders right now. I was just about to say that. The wide receivers were better this year for the full year than the quarterback play was. So if you give the quarterback play a B+, looking at you, Mike, you better give the wide receivers an A. And you can't, they're not A's. I mean, come on. So it's got to be higher than a C. I agree. 100%. That's why you go to a B. I can't wait to see what Mike says because Mike's kind of lost in the sauce. If Mike says B+, or he raises them worse than the quarterback play, that's going to be insane.
Give them the A. So I'm with you on giving the wide receivers a B.
I wrote B as well, and that's a grade that they raised too. I mean, they were probably a C+ heading into December, and they got up to a B by finishing strong. I mean, Olave we didn't mention him in the MVP conversation, but if I could only protect one player on the team, it might be him. And
Olave could be most improved from how he started to how he finished, him and Carr. But Mike worked himself into a shoot here, where now he's graded Derek Carr's performance the same. He's actually graded, what do you say, B+ for Carr? Can't remember now. I was so fired up. But whatever he gave Carr, it's either he's telling me, he's lying to my face. He's telling me that Olave, Shahid, and Thomas's performance this year was the same, if not worse, than Carr's performance.
I think he got back there to where we felt about him in the preseason by the end of the year, and a lot of that was learning how to work with this quarterback, and they really became probably the unit with the highest grade on here by the end of it, maybe.
Maybe. All right, tight ends.
Oof. Initial thought was a D. Because, man, we have 12 tight ends. I mean, we have so many tight ends, and none of them really did anything. Jawan Johnson had one good game. The rest of the season, he might as well have been sitting next to me in the loge, knocking down a couple of dome dogs himself. Foster Moreau, totally non-existent. Jimmy Graham had some cool touchdown catches, but really he didn't do much as far as like the production level. He got the dome fired up, but he wasn't utilized as much as he should have. I'd give them a D.
I went D. I mean, they didn't get a lot out of him. I mean, Taysom, if you want to count him in there, he raises it up without Taysom. Jawan was out.
I'm not counting Taysom either. And honestly, Taysom, I mean, I know he was hurt towards the end there, but Taysom really kind of fell off a cliff after his injury. He did virtually nothing.
Most of the season. I think Foster had a pretty good season in his own role, but, overall, I feel like
he had a good season in his own role. Look at these numbers. Foster Moreau had 193 yards and a touchdown. Good season in his role. What was his role? Hanging out on the sideline?
They definitely, if there was an average bar, I feel like they were a little bit below average.
I couldn't pass them. I gave him a D too.
Yeah, I wrote C-, but I don't know.
D's get degrees, man.
Yeah, D is pass. D is passing. D is passing, C is passing, B is passing, A is passing. F is the only thing that doesn't pass. Agreed.
D's a passing grade. D is a passing grade. Absolutely. Yeah, you can get out.
We've got Brandon chiming in the background.
Now, see, controversial though, because I believe in college, if you get a D, the credit you don't get the credit. So I think in college, I may be wrong here, but I'm pretty sure in college you can't get a D in your like core curriculum for it to count to your degree. I think you have to get C and above for it to count. High school, you can graduate with D's, I believe, but I might have that mixed up.
He never agreed with one of our points more strongly than that one for some reason. But I wrote C-, but I don't know why I gave him that much credit. Maybe because I had Taysom in my head. But
yeah, Mike, what the hell are you talking about? A C-? This, Mike.
Definitely. A D+ average among the group is probably deserved. It was underachieving across the board too. And look, when we talk about all this, we're talking about their position coaches and how they were used just as much. Like the tight ends didn't just go out there and fail.
Yeah, I'm just talking about production
on their own. They also weren't used correctly. They didn't. I mean, Foster Moreau, whatever their plan for him was, they didn't execute it. Juwan Johnson, it took until the very end of the season to look like what we thought he was going to look like. And Jimmy Graham, we talked all year long about, like, he was inactive for half the season, even though he seemed to be a fairly effective red zone target.
The running backs, this one, a lot of injuries.
Ooh, okay. All right, now, this is tough. I'll tell you why it's tough. We could not run the football at all. Now, is that on the running backs or the offensive line? I don't know. Because you could give the running game a grade. You could give each running back a grade. Like Jamal Williams is an F. He has an F grade. 1 touchdown. And we all know it came with some controversy. So really it could be 0 touchdowns on the year. After leading the NFL in touchdowns, you go to 0 touchdowns on the season. Kamara was good because he carried the offense, but he didn't really do anything as far as, I don't know, having a 100-yard game rushing. So if you blended the whole thing, running backs, probably a D+, and Kamara is dragging that up. I'd give Kamara like a B-, and the rest of them are Fs. Kendrick was cool at times, but I mean, like, Jamal is a hard, big-time F. So, I mean, C- is the absolute highest I could go for the running back group. They were probably, what do I do here? What are we thinking? I'll say C- because Kamara, I think, was good. Kendra shined at times, and Jamal was absolutely horrific. So I'll go C-. I'll say the running backs were a little bit better than the tight ends, and if I gave the tight ends a D, then I'm cool with the running backs being a C-.
Suspensions, expecting a whole lot from a rookie who was dealing with injuries, expecting a whole lot from the 2022 season touchdown leader. I gave these guys a D, and I almost wanted to even go a little bit lower just because it was so underachieving. The only reason why I didn't go below a D is just for what Alvin was able to produce and bring. And then just that little blurb that we saw when Kendre Miller's healthy, what he can be. I'm actually really excited to see a healthy Kendre Miller next year with the Saints.
I think with Alvin, you can see that he was doing everything he could to make it work. And I thought he was running as good as I've seen him run in a long time. He was hard carrying this offense early on. Like in the middle part of the season when everything was kind of struggling, it was the Alvin Kamara show. I mean, again, guys, he had 13 catches for 33 yards. You know, at one point he was on pace to break Michael Thomas's single season receiving record for receptions. He was on pace to break that record. So at one point there, it was all Alvin, all on him. And I think he was playing some really good football. So I'm kind of grading him higher than his numbers say I should probably be grading him. And then I'm blending all of that together with how bad the rest of them were. So, and I'm also giving some of that to the offensive line where I'm docking them for the inability of running. So I'm going to stick with my grade, but I would not blame anybody for giving this group a D.
I don't even know what to do with this because, like, Alvin to me was like if you're doing offensive MVP, like he was second to me behind McCoy, I think, on that list. But everybody else is an F at running back, and Alvin is
100%.
So I don't know what the average is of those two things, but whatever it is, that's what their grade is. So Alvin, but if you're gonna grade this on a curve and you're getting rid of the highest point, so you're getting rid of Alvin's grade, they failed. But Alvin did exist, and he was the backbone of that group. But
yeah, I mean Nick is. Me and him are in lockstep with this one. It's exactly what I just said, exactly how I'm grading this. The answer, I think, is if you're saying Alvin was a B+ to an A, just an individual effort, individual performance, carrying the team, all that stuff, and then you have a couple of Fs, I think somewhere C- is probably fair.
I don't really know how to average those.
It's
two
so funny.
out.
My card here, I wrote C-, and then I erased it and made it a C just because of Alvin. And I have all these Alvin notes. He finished 89 yards per game from scrimmage and 6 TDs, 75 catches. If he would have played just one more game, played that last game, he would have finished with the exact same 81 catches that he had in his first 3 seasons when he kept having 81 catches exactly first. I mean, he was darn near 100 yards a game from scrimmage for the first like 8 weeks after he came back, and you know, he was such a core value part of this offense. But even with all that, he only averaged 3.9 yards per carry, which was the second lowest of his career. They didn't know how to use Jamal Williams. Kendre Miller barely got on the field. The position group was a huge disappointment, but Alvin was like the kid in the group project who's like, well, they haven't texted me back, Mom, so I guess I'll just do the thing by myself, and the whole grade we'll all get a C together.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate for Alvin that we do have to value them as a group because he just stands alone. He's not even really on the same playing field if you're just looking at the stats this year, but it's running back groups. We're going to.
Well, this is a big reason why this year we were so vocal against the Jamal Williams thing. Because, I mean, I don't have a problem with Jamal, but the idea, like, it was so obvious that Alvin was doing so much more. And it's at a certain point, it just became a wasted play to run Jamal Williams or run anyone else or do anything else. Everything was so disjointed. It was like, guys, just pound Alvin Kamara, throw him the ball, let him try and carry this offense. Let's not try and just get him a breather. Let's not try and just give him a break on third down. He has to be on the field. He's the only one producing. He's the only one doing anything. All those other carries were just wasted carries. And that's how it proved to be true.
A grade.
They
probably would have been failing for all three of us.
It's another position where the coaches and the coordinators all deserve blame for not using any of them to their fullest or putting any of them in their best position, and Alvin does get included with that.
Yeah. All right, offensive line is next. This is another one that highs and
I think it's easy to say F because of how bad they were at the beginning. I think they raised up to a D because, again, guys, look, we could not run the football. Could not run the football. We did not have over 90 yards, I don't think, rushing all season long. So, I mean, but protection did get better. Some of those numbers, just how it looked, the scheme and all that stuff. I'll say they started a hard F, like complete failure, disaster. They kind of got okay-ish towards the end there. So but you can't go higher than a D, I don't think. So I'll say a D for the offensive line.
Lows, highs and lows. I have to give credit for the backups that have stepped in, but when you're just evaluating the group, they were one of those two where you could give them a failing grade. I bumped them up to a D, though, for my grade for the offensive line.
Agreed.
You're such a hard grader. It's 9 and 8 teams getting nothing but D's from Brooke. I was between C- and D+ because they finished so strong, but D+ when I just think across the board, I mean, you got to factor Trevor.
I'm not sure if Mike went. Has he ever got a test graded? The difference between D's and C, like, that's a huge difference there. I mean, this is wild. I mean, God, D. Good job by Brooke.
Penning into this group, who is obviously an F. Because, you know, he was supposed to be the starting left tackle, and he was benched within a month and never got the job back. The sacks they allowed early in the season led to that Derek Carr injury and led to those injuries that continued all year long. They really, really improved in that area. Eric McCoy was Nick's MVP, so you got to give him some credit for that. But they never really fixed the run game. 31st in the NFL with 3.6 yards per carry. I thought that was bad all the way through the season.
D, but like mostly because of the offensive scheme and them having a port line.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Yeah, a lot of that goes back. We'll see what happens, too. I'm curious. Whoever the offensive mind is that comes in here, what will the offensive line look like? All those things. I think we'll get a better evaluation of that group when they get a new OC. Switching over to the defensive side of things, linebackers. We're back up. I'm off the season D's. I'm back to a B.
I'm cool with a B because of how good DeMario was. I think the defense is going to get. We're going to kind of skip through the defense pretty quick because this video is getting kind of long. So we're gonna skip through this pretty fast, but I'll say linebackers. I'll say B. DeMario is really, really good. You could even Zach Bond kind of started towards the end there when he started becoming more of a pass rusher. We started seeing him get those sacks. He became pretty impactful. I I'd say B plus. I could even hear an A.
B with the linebackers. And let me just say this. I know we're going to go through this list. I didn't give anybody an A because I didn't feel like nobody deserved an A.
Yeah, that's
so
fine.
B
That's
to me is like my highest I'm going to give in case you guys are watching and wondering.
I think this was, yeah, you could maybe say the secondary, but I think the linebackers in the secondary were pretty good this year. So, I
when that
agree.
A is going
I'm
to
with
come,
it.
it's not coming from me. But I do give the linebackers a B. Hit or miss, yes, with the running quarterbacks. I think they were exposed a couple of times, Demario Davis specifically, but I think that goes back to defensive scheme as we have talked about on our shows. But all in all, I grade the linebackers a B.
I had the same thing. I thought Demario had a great season. Obviously, he was MVP candidate for the team, all-pro player.
Agree across the board. All right, let's go to defensive end. Defensive end, Carl Granderson, Cam Jordan. So this is going to be very similar to the running back thing where Carl was good, but overall, the production we got from the ends, the production we got pass rushing, things like that, was bad. Wasn't good at all. We couldn't get sacks. We struggled pressuring the passer. The mobile quarterbacks just ate us up. There's a lot of times where we get our hands on quarterbacks in the pocket. They would escape. They would get through sacks. So I'd say a C minus, but a lot of it is Carl Granderson kind of carrying.
It was just poor, but Carl Granderson played well. But overall, I mean, and again, it's injuries. It's not having enough talent. It's kind of more on the front office and the players on the field that they didn't get more out of this position. Cam Jordan's hurt, so that kind of brings it down. But you got to factor in the production overall. And overall, the production I thought was really low. So I mean, that's where I end up on it.
I was actually.
So what did Nick give? Let's see here.
Hear from you guys on this group.
I got a D minus for him. I mean, the
D minus, yeah, okay. I mean, I was kind of doing the blend there, but I could certainly hear D minus just because of how much. I mean, they didn't do anything. All right, let's go to defensive tackle. So defensive tackle, it depends on how you like. Brazee was good. He wasn't. I mean, how good was he? I thought he was good enough, especially for a rookie season. I would give him a good grade. The run defense was problematic. Kalen Saunders, I think, he didn't do what people thought he would come in and do. I think he's probably known more this season for being a fullback at times than what he did on the defensive line. I'd say this was just like a dead average C minus. I'm cool with the D minus.
Talk about that week after week. How many times did we talk with Malcolm Roach before he got injured and Cam Jordan? Malcolm Roach was in tears. He was so frustrated with the run lanes just being wide open for these offenses and them just not being able to figure it out. It got to the point to where it was the question week after week after week. Yes, it did improve, I guess, a little bit at the end of the season, but to me that was like the breaking point, I think, in the locker room, and that was the first time I saw like real tears and emotion when they talked about that.
Yeah, I mean, I got a D for them. I mean, I thought Brian Brzee had a good rookie season. He didn't really play a lot of run defense, so he doesn't have a lot of dirty hands on that. He hit the numbers, though, sack-wise, that I think we all kind of wanted to see, and that's a tough position to kind of transition into. So I'm really high on him, and I think he's going to get better as he learns how to play with lower leverage and all that stuff, and just keeps coming into his own and gets more comfortable, and then learns how to play the run, too, a little bit better, which I think he got better at later in the year. But him aside, I mean, I thought it was incredibly disappointing. The run defense was just way too poor to really let anyone off the hook here. So they were below average for sure. Yeah,
I think you get D's across the board, and then Brzee kind of drags them up. But I'm totally understanding at a D. All right, so now we're at safety. I'd probably give them a C plus. I thought Tyrann was good. I thought he was pretty good this year. So I'll say C plus.
Good when Jonathan Abram in there. I thought he played well. I thought Marcus May was.
That's my
good when Jonathan Abram in there.
What do we got?
I got a B. I mean, I thought Tyrann had a good season. I thought in spurts Jordan Howden was good when Jonathan Abram in there. I thought he played well. I thought Marcus May was solid when he was out on the field. Him and Tyrann kind of had some communication going this year better than last year. So I thought there was more continuity and familiarity within that group. But I thought they were pretty good overall.
Be cool with that. All right, cornerbacks, I think you give a B plus here. Adebo was good. Taylor, it's hard to get the Ram game out of your mind. It's hard to be like, yeah, Alontae Taylor was really good this year. Oh, except for the time that he got benched because he was getting abused by Puka Nacua. But I think Adebo was good. I think Lattimore was good until he got hurt. So I'd be cool with a B. I'd be cool with a B plus if you want to really grade Adebo highly, like they're really high on Adebo. So I'll say B. I'll be the tough grader out of the group.
Give them that
A plus to B.
Not A plus. I couldn't give them the A grade. So I'm going B for the cornerbacks. Overall,
yes.
I think they had a solid year, but
agreed.
that one game, it was just really glaring. When you went up against a solid offense, you got exposed.
To me, it's an A. And I mean, look, they were playing with an injured group, and they played the best offense they were going to play on a short week, and they didn't have the same amount of time to prepare and everything. Maybe on a full week of preparation, they look a little bit better. I mean, the fact that we're even talking about them in this context is a huge credit to that coaching staff. The fact that they were able to play.
I don't disagree, but I'm saying it's very difficult for me to say this is an A performance after what the Rams did. I mean, I understand there was injuries. I understand it was short rest, but it is what it is. You know, part of the game. So you can't watch the Rams game and be like, this is an A secondary right here.
After losing Marshawn Lattimore, and it wasn't an issue the whole entire year. So, you know, Ike Adams stepping up and looking the way he did, Paulson Adebo having the season he had is a huge credit to that group.
You do have to factor in, too, who they played. I mean, we had the easiest schedule in the season, or in the NFL. We played nothing but backups and rookie quarterbacks. So the fact that they might have had their best seasons isn't a coincidence. And then you play good teams and you get absolutely torched. So I'm not exactly falling for it with some of the performances.
Group Marshawn's Marshawn. I mean, it's an easy A for me.
Yeah, I'll go A minus, but I mean, we're nitpicking for all those reasons.
Skip the ads. Best and worst moments of the season. All right, so So best moment. Let's see. Best moment would probably have to be. Man, it's tough because there really wasn't. Like, you want to say like the Falcons game at the end of the year, or you want to say the Bucks game, but it's hard for those to be the best moment when they really didn't mean anything. You know, like, I guess we never had a moment where I'm really. It's easy to do the worst moments. You know, it's easy to do that, but it's hard to think what was a really good moment. Same with like the games against like Carolina, and same, the Giants, like, and the Bears. You know, like those games, those wins. You look back on it, it's like, is that the best moment? Beating Tyson Bagent? Is that the best moment? Beating Tommy DeVito? Is that the best moment? Beating the Bucks in a game that didn't mean anything for the season? The Falcons, you know, season's over with. Like, you beat a lame coach, a lame duck coach, and a bad quarterback. Like, I guess the best, if I had to put one, probably the Bucks game, I guess, because the Bucks are good. Bucks are a playoff team. Bucks are playing well. You go beat them on the road. You get revenge for what they did to you in the Dome. Mario Davis and Derek Carr after the game seemed like that was a good win for the team. Something that was a good win for the culture. But not a lot to choose from, honestly.
The season for me, and I went with games on both of these. Like, it was just the Atlanta game in general, like the whole entire thing.
The second one.
Yeah, it worked up to a crescendo at the end of the year. Like, and that was the first time I really felt like, oh wow, this team could actually be good. The problem is when it ended, and in the way that undermined.
That part was fun as far as a fan, as just to see the chaos with the Jameis Winston and the touchdown and the victory formation and all that stuff. And I'm also a little bit biased here because winning the Atlanta game, you know, having that 9.5 regular season win total and knowing that I couldn't get over the win total, it made the win to get to 9 even that much more painful. You know, so the idea, like, leading until the ticket was lost, and if you don't know what I'm talking about, I had a huge bet on the Saints to win over 9.5 games in the regular season. So once mathematically I couldn't do that, it was hard to enjoy the Atlanta win because it was just a punch in the stomach that I lost by a half win when we blew so many wins. So it was hard for me to really enjoy that game. The ending was hilarious, but
the whole
Yeah, I
entire
can't give it the
process.
whole game for that reason.
But like to me, that game though, just the way they played, like it just kind of was like okay, like this was what it was supposed to be. The week before, it felt like they were building towards something, and then that one, it was just like all right, and they kind of cemented it, and it kind of was the icing on the cake of like if they were going to keep everything together, what did you need to see? Okay, it was that. So they kind of gave you what you needed to see in that last moment of the season. And
yeah, I went specifically from that game, the Chris Olave catch, like the most incredible, like maybe not even his most incredible catch of the season, but still one of the most incredible catches I ever saw. But just how that was the icing on the cake of how far Derek Carr and Chris Olave had come. But
what a bittersweet cake. You know, the idea that you finally see it, but you see it when it's too late. You know, that's why that Atlanta game, like, it was good, but man, like, it still hurts.
We midway through the season, we thought, is this a disaster? And by the end of the season, it was like, oh, these two, I can't wait to see more from them. I mean, honestly, if you have one of those like decibel reading meters or like a heart rate chart, like I never felt higher on this team than when Derek Carr completed that touchdown pass to Rashid Shaheed in week 1, and it was mic'd up and all that, and we thought, oh wow, they really have something here. It just went away for so long after that.
Yeah, you took my best. Yeah, that was my. I'm going. You guys went week 18. I'm going week 1. It was the freaking run clip of Derek Carr throwing a go route to Rashid Shaheed. The reason why it was the moment for me, it was because there's so much hope, there's so much promise for this offense.
That's what gets you in sports is the hope. You know, that's what makes everything so painful. Hope is what hurts as a sports fan.
What is it going to be? To me, it was like the peak of a high moment that just came crashing down.
But honestly, you could go with the preseason touchdown drive.
Yeah, the preseason drive was incredible. Preseason drive, I thought we were a Super Bowl team.
It worked so perfect, and then Derek Carr and the starters all rested. Like that was probably when we were the highest on
not
them
even
all.
that. It's not even just the play; it was the situation. 3rd and 6, you had 2 minutes. You had to get this first down in order to seal the game. And we're like, all right, he's a game manager. This quarterback, he's able to find his guys. He's able to trust in his wide receivers and their speed. He knows which ones to go to, and unfortunately, it just took a while to get back to that. All right, let's go to our worst moment now. From
worst is there's a lot of these. I mean, you could go. The Minnesota game was really, really bad. The Minnesota was awful because it was just Josh Dobbs, and there's no reason they were down Justin Jefferson. We were the better team, and Josh Dobbs just beat us in such an embarrassing way, and it was never close. At the very end, Jameis pulled us within 8 points or whatever it was, but it really wasn't ever competitive, and those were just the worst games to watch. That was really bad. But you could also say the Lions was the lowest point because it was 21-0 in the first 2 minutes of the game. We start off with an interception, we start off just so bad. That was probably the fever pitch for the fans, where you're booing Carr off the field, you're booing the team off the field. But you could also argue that was the most cathartic moment. That was the most therapeutic moment as a fan, to be able to voice how upset you were at the team and how mad you were at the team, and be recognized and be realized. So that there was some positives in that moment, but there was no positives in the Vikings moment. There was no positives in the Atlanta game. The first Atlanta game was really bad. That was awful. The Jaguars game was bad. There was a lot of lows. I mean, there was a lot of lows because everything was on such a razor's edge, and we never got the positive part of the razor's edge. Everything, if the game came down to the final 2 minutes, we probably lost it. If it came down to the final catch, it wasn't in our favor. If it came down to any of the stuff that I'm talking about, it just didn't work. It just didn't work out. The close games, we just couldn't get there. So I guess if I had to pick one, it would probably be Atlanta, because we were off a bye. Atlanta's not very good, a division rival. It's more important than the Minnesota game. 5 field goals, kicked 6 field goals, missed 1. Carr's pick 6. Thanksgiving ruined my entire holiday. I mean, you could also say the Packers. The Packers' blown lead probably like the worst actual loss, but you also kind of have to factor in that Carr was hurt, he didn't play, all of that. It's one of those for sure. I mean, there's so many. Maybe it is Green Bay. Maybe the Green Bay game is the worst just because it's a blown lead. But you do kind of have to factor in that Carr wasn't on the field.
The 2023
Packers game. I mean, no doubt about it. They were flying so high. Carr gets hurt. They collapse in the second half. Missed field goal. Jameis has an opportunity to kind of run away with that game. Doesn't take advantage of it. The whole team was just deflated. And in hindsight, when you look back on it, as Mike Triplett said in the moment, like that was a damning afternoon for the team, and it kind of undermined their whole season. So I don't think anything else even comes close. Like that was absolutely
well. And I'm going to get even more specific. It's Derek Carr getting hurt in the Packers game because, as he later alluded to, he didn't feel healthy again until like.
I mean, if you want to do the old domino effect, then it probably is that, because if Carr doesn't get hurt there, do we lose? Do we lose? Not the Packers game, but do we lose in the games afterwards? Do we struggle in the games afterwards? Because I believe the next game was the Buccaneers game, right, at home, because Carr played, but he wasn't 100%. That was Kamara's first game back and all that stuff. But the Packers game, if you would do it like that, like a dominoes effect, it probably is the worst situation. I was kind of thinking of it more of like the worst performance. And the Packers wasn't our worst performance. We played good. Carr got hurt, and then all hell broke loose. It was more the Packers winning the game than us playing poorly. Like, we played way worse against Minnesota, way worse against Atlanta. But just as far as the trickle effect, the domino effect, it probably is the Green Bay game.
December. And so not only did they end up losing that game that was so costly, it sapped all that momentum, it affected the way he played for months after that. But if I want to pick a different candidate, I mean, to me, it's the first Atlanta loss. They went into Minnesota the week before the bye, where everyone was kind of like, does this team have anything? And they played like crap. Then they had a bye week, and then they come back to Atlanta, and it's like, all right, now you basically have to go
even
like 5-2
worse
down the stretch. Show us what you're made of. And they just let an Atlanta team that said, we're just going to run on every play, run all over them, and they scored 0 points and went 0 for 5 in the red zone. I don't think it's felt lower with this team since 2016 than it did that week.
For my worst moment, I'll go worst quarter. The first quarter of that Lions game.
It's funny how like we had all those bad things or whatever, and each one of them picked one of those moments. Like that's just kind of how the season was. The season was. It really was full of just the most trying, worst things that could possibly happen. We beat, like, even the wins. Like I'm saying, even the wins were just so empty. The Bucs win, the Falcons win at the end. We're too late. The wins against Carolina, it's like everyone beat Carolina. The wins against the Giants, Tommy DeVito, the Bears, Tyson Bagent. The Titans was a good win, but even looking back, it was. Offensively, it wasn't a good performance, so it was definitely a tough season as a fan.
When we
that
all
was right
just
after that too.
We all just looked at each other and thought, has the defense played worse? You remember the Lions, bam, 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 all 3 first possessions, touchdowns. Derek Carr threw a pass to Juwan Johnson that got knocked out or whatever, and Juwan probably should have held on to it. It was an interception.
Yeah, I think it went through his hands.
It was just so ugly. 3 straight punts for the Saints on offense. They did not score until the second quarter. That was the bleakest I have felt watching this team. Was the first quarter against the Detroit Lions. And to be fair,
all the Lions fans, that was the game where they're booing Carr every time he enters the field, and they're cheering every time Taysom Hill replaces him.
And to be fair to the conversation,
but like Mike said, with his pick, how that kind of was a domino effect for bad things. What the Lions moment was kind of a domino effect for good things. That's when this team really, pulled up their bootstraps or whatever and kind of got this thing figured out. So as far as a domino effect, it wasn't the worst moment because it almost kind of like helped them rise up.
Our lead topic, I think, in that game was how the team responded in that game.
Exactly,
and that was the first time we really saw
Brooke on the same
respond
page here.
And show fight. And you saw very quickly in that second quarter, Derek Carr just snapped right to it and didn't let the boos affect him. They got back into the game. They still lost that game, but man, to come back from one of the worst performances I've ever seen in a first quarter of football, and still have the gall to come back and show that you have something left in the tank, to me was impressive to see.
Yeah, no doubt. This is a good pick.
Yeah. All right, let's get to our Martin's question of the day. Martin's.
All right, so this question is about will they hire an OC before the Senior Bowl? We're going to skip this question. This video is crazy long. I think they should. I also think they should hire someone so no one else does. You know, if they have these good candidates, we did a video on the candidates they have so far, hire one. You know, Zach Robinson, pitcher, and Shane, hire one. If you like them, interview them, hire them. You know, like, make it happen. Get them in there, make your pick, be comfortable and courageous in the selection. Do it, get them in here. Let's get started. Let's get moving. Let's get evaluating. Let's do all that stuff. So I hope they do move quick. They should move quick. I don't want them to rush it. But if they feel confident in one of these guys that they're interviewing, there's no need to go look at 40 candidates or keep going. And then you never know. One might get picked off here. One might get picked off there. So go ahead and make the selection. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for watching. Long video grading the Saints. I hope y'all enjoyed it. I'll see you in the next video.